So I just got my trains today. I just went to the mailbox and I got this C30-7 or U30C, and it's in bad shape. I mean, it looks like it was used in a sandbox. Obviously somebody's played around with it because it's got microtrans coupler in the front and the repeater coupler in the back. So that's actually what I like to get. It's in really rough shape. So it's undecorated, so it needs to be painted, but also it needs to be cleaned. It's in a very, very bad shape. It will not run. It hardly runs. So let's just let me just show you how it runs. So it's got a long ways to go. So the main problem that it has is it's poor pickup, poor electrical pickup. So I know how to fix that. It's actually fun to take something like that that doesn't run at all and to turn around and make it run. These are very good runners. It's the same drive as a SD40-2. So overall it'll be worth it. So I spared you the shell removal. Everything's there. So it just needs to be clean and the shell needs to be painted. So it's going to be a painted Penn Central, of course, because Canadian National or Canadian Pacific, they didn't have U30C. I take the shell apart before I paint it because I don't paint the handrails. So I'm going to do that very carefully. Push out these pins one at a time. Push out the windows. The windows hold the cab together. Make sure you don't wreck the handrails. Half of them are gone, so not too much of a concern. And the handrails, they come out like this. Just prime very gently. Actually really good quality, these handrails. Wow, this really shows you how dusty this is. Like somebody played with it in the sandbox. But we'll put it through soap and water and we'll see what it looks like after. And the cab just comes right out. And I'm going to take the windows out before I paint it. This one didn't have a box, so I'm going to get a box and I'll put all my parts in the box. And the horn is missing. What can you do? What I paid for it, that's okay. So I've got all my parts sorted out. And now we're ready for cleaning. But I'm going to set the shell aside for now. I'm going to focus on the drive system. So remove the gas tank, remove the lights, and the light shield in the front. Put that in your box. And the two screws again. Same thing as before, you want to keep track of the order in which they come out. So now we'll get access to what's inside. It's got a few miles on it, which is okay. I bought it used. And I'm glad somebody did enjoy it. I'm going to remove these two insulators because you definitely want to keep track of those. You need them to make the locomotive work. The contact strips, they're still there, but if they fall out, that's okay. I'll do the same thing with the other one. And then usually I just put a little bit of oil here and there. But since this one's a little bit dirtier than usual, I'm going to take everything off. Immediately, it makes a big difference to how the locomotive feels. I don't recommend using steel wool. I just use my toothbrush and some dish soap, very gentle soap. Now I'm going to do the worm gears and the motor. I'm using Varsol and a paintbrush. I don't know if you can see there's hairs on there. So that obviously is no good. So I'm going to make sure to remove these before I reassemble everything. The Varsol allows me to get some of this heavy grease out. I'm going to replace it with the Labelle 108, which is easier to turn. So that's how much hair I found on the one worm gear. So this amount of hair would actually not stop your locomotive from running, but obviously it's going to help to get it out. You don't need much grease in there or oil, just a drop will do the trick. So even though this motor still has a little bit of mileage on it, it still runs great, both directions. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on each bearing at each side. Just over here and over here. So I'll do that off camera. So we're about halfway there. Now I test it with my leads to make sure that there's no interference. That sounds pretty good. Now I add the other side of the frame and I listen again just to make sure everything's turning freely. Sounds pretty good to me. And that's what I like. This is the main reason why the locomotive wasn't running. The wheels are very dirty. There's also all kinds of imperfections in the gears, so that has to be cleaned. It's a 6-wheel truck, so it's slightly different than the 4-wheel trucks, but you use the same way. Gently pry them out. I put my fingernail in here to prevent it from going back in when I work to the front one. Go very gently, one tab at a time. They're pretty sturdy, but it would be a shame to break this. It's very detailed, very nice to look at. Also, look for inside the journals here. You might find some hair or whatever, dirt. The hair usually accumulates here, and that's bad. Prevents the contact, prevents electricity from going through. So I'll be taking some time to remove that type of stuff. That's what I mean, that's got to go. There's hair wrapped around the axles, so that's going to have to go too. So after the hair is gone, I still use my rag to clean my wheels. I use a toothbrush and some dish soap, and then I still clean it with my rag to make sure it's 100% clear. This is what picks up the electricity from the tracks, so it's got to be 100%. And don't use steel wool on these. Use actual nickel silver plating because the oxide of nickel silver conducts electricity. So that's why locomotives are so expensive. So I'll do all the wheels like this. So my components are back from being cleaned. So I'm going to put them back together now. So this little gear, usually I don't take it out, but this one was so dirty that I had to. It only goes back one way. Same with the axles. And the contact plates go back. Make sure that you have the bearings in the end caps. And also make sure that you have these pins in through here. Very important. That's going to make a huge difference at the end. Same thing for the other side. Make sure everything turns. And then you can put this side frames back on. It only goes one way. You can't make it work this way. So it has to go this way. So as you're doing that, make sure all your bearings are in the end caps. Very important. Snaps into place. That seems to be very good. You can test it with your finger. You should be feeling no resistance whatsoever as the wheels turn. So all that's left to do now is put everything back together. The contact strips, they have an itinerary where they go over this pin and under this pin. So it's very important that you line them up properly before you put your gas tank on. So now I'm going to test it on my workbench just to make sure everything's in the proper place. The real test, of course, is on the track, but this will still tell me if there's a problem. I'll know right away. Sounds pretty good. So you have to test it on the track before you put your shell on. That way it's much easier to get at if you want to change something. That looks pretty good to me. Pretty happy with that. So now I'm ready to paint. So I made these stands out of stuff I had lying around. The bottom one for the cab is made out of clothespins and a pencil, and the top one is just an old vise and some wire. So I'm only going to be doing one coat because I want the details to stand out, and I won't touch it for a couple of days now. So it's back from the paint shop. Looks really good. So now we're ready for some decals. So it would look okay like this, but I'm going to put some dull coat so it matches all my other trains. This would be a locomotive that's freshly shocked, but I want it to match on my other engines. So now I have all my parts, and I'm going to reassemble everything together. The dull coat dries very quickly. What a huge change from before. Looks really good. Now it's time to run some trains. It runs very well.